Everyone, this is Scott Needham. I'm here with Jim Cockrum and Rich Potter. We have all been in the Amazon arena for a while, and so we have been working together recently on a few different projects. And so I decided that, we should get some of this conversation on the podcast to talk about what we've got going and how this actually can help a lot of other people in their Amazon businesses. So welcome, Jim. Rich, what's up?
Hey, Scott, thanks for having us.
Great to be here, man.
Okay, so plenty of wholesale experience here, and that's probably what brings us together. I've been developing software for Amazon wholesale or resellers, and lately this last year focused on building out a more sophisticated software tool. It's easy to build ugly ones internally, but when you're giving something to other people, you got to make sure it's really good and really clean, and that's SmartScout. And Rich was an early adopter and has dug into it. I think he caught my vision of it, and which I think is says something about him, because it does take a perspective of oh, here's all this data about brands on Amazon, and here's how I can use it. But Rich is also a wholesale, and he's been helping other people. And one interesting thing that I wanted to point out was he will actually he has a 4-day kickstart to help other people build their business. So Rich, tell me more about that, essentially from the start to the end, building out a wholesale Amazon business.
Sure. Yeah. So the 4-day, we actually partner with Jim Cockrum's community, the My Silent Team community, on this. So I do a lot of coaching for him and his group. And so kind of what happened was I was in San Francisco visiting my brother, who we've been talking for years now about my wholesale business, and he's kind of wanted to start something up. And so he's like, I should send my wife, I should send my office manager, should send them all to Arizona there, meet you, and you can teach them. And the more we thought about it, it sounded like a great idea to do it for him, but we could also do it for other people and bring it to the community at large, right? So I approached Jim with the idea, I think back in April or May. And so we kind of did a pilot one here, I think back in April, with some of my family and an old college buddy of mine. And then after our test pilot kind of trial run, then we launched it to Jim's community in May or June. I can't remember exactly what, but so yeah, it's a 4-day kind of full immersion type training where we go A to Z, man. We'll start off with what we call replenishable arbitrage or replens, to kind of teach people how to sell on Amazon. And then as the days progress, we get into the warehouse stuff and the wholesale stuff. Yep. and the whole thing there.
So it's been about 8 years. Let's see, 2013. We're closing in on 9 years since I was a newbie. And so it's been a while. What are now, there's a lot of differences. There's a lot of changes. What are some of the building blocks that people need that you're actually spending those days with talking about?
Well, we start right off. The first day is really based on Amazon basics, right? So we start off with a foundational knowledge of Keepa, really dig into Keepa, and just getting people to set up their businesses right with an LLC, and separating their business finances and everything from their personal stuff. So we just we focus in there, right? So we'll do how to read Keepa charts. We use a tool that we really like called RevSeller. So getting to know your numbers and profitability, and that's really where we focus that first day, is just those basics, setting up your account. And most people that come to me, they already have that kind of stuff in place, right? Because it's slightly more advanced coaching that we're doing, right? We're just kind of honing in on maybe some of their arbitrage skills at first, where people are just going out and they're finding clearance and stuff like that. We're trying to focus in on stuff that can be replenishable. Because I started 6 years ago, And I came from the world of distribution. I worked for a distributor for 12 years before I got into Amazon.
Yeah.
And when I got into Amazon, the only thing that made sense to me was wholesale, right? Because it's replenishable. You're buying direct from the brand or from their representative at the distributor, and you can just place POs and the stuff comes in. And I need something, I call up my rep and I get it in a week, right? So like we didn't do any of that arbitrage at first until that replen model came in, and we started thinking of, oh, we can actually do arbitrage in kind of a wholesale manner where it's replenishable. And so we like to start there with people because it's a kind of a foundation. It's an easy way to learn how to do Amazon, right? And then we get into
anytime that someone starts in that route, like I feel like we're cut from the same cloth. Like we understand it because I think 2011 Black Friday, my brother who kind of got me into this business, rented out a van, and we were doing Black Friday Walmart, and that's like where you can understand and see the value on the shelves around you and understand the fee structure, and you're like, and you can make money there. And so I love when people have that beginnings, because I do think it forces you to think about like the profitability first.
Yeah, absolutely. Yep. Oh, but for me, like really wholesale, it's easier to scale and it's easier to sustain, you know, and so that's always been kind of the background of our business.
So yeah, probably a lot of listeners this show will know day one. Now, what's like day 2, 3, and 4 look like?
Yeah, so day 2 we get into goodness, I got the schedule here. Let me take a look. So day 2, I always forget like off the top of my head, right? So day 2 we get into like warehouse stuff. We get into ungating strategies, a pay-per-click strategy. We talk about inventory management tools.
I'm actually curious, what inventory management tools do you recommend?
I'm a huge fan of SmartScout.
Okay. Yeah.
I love SmartScout and their ability to forecast and just kind of track the
Chelsea was on my podcast just 2 months ago. So shoot, now we got validation right here in the wild.
Yeah, she's built an incredible tool. I love it.
Really? Yep. Awesome.
Yeah, it rivals anything I've seen out there and used before. So I love that. We like to use Sellerboard to track our profitability. And it's also good with some like autoresponders and getting money back from Amazon. It's got a lot of cool features built in for a very, very low price.
Yeah.
So, and then day 3, like we start right off in the warehouse. They'll spend the entire morning in the warehouse learning from my warehouse manager. And we'll go from, just simple stuff is like, packing and when to polybag and when to bubble wrap and when to box. And then we do LTL, like we do it all, right? So it's a good 3.5 hours in the warehouse with my warehouse manager. And then the last day and a half, it's wholesale. We dig into foundations of wholesale. We really take a deep dive into SmartScout because that's my tool of choice now, man. I love that tool.
Oh, I don't hate hearing that.
How bad? Yeah, so we've used other tools in the past. These other tools out there that were created by private label sellers, they're good for private label and they're okay for wholesale, right? But dude, we love SmartScout for wholesale. Created by a wholesale guy for us wholesale guys.
Yeah. And what's really interesting is that you're totally right. That's the perspective I created it from. I had these like nagging thoughts in the back of my mind, like what should I be spending my time on right now? What are the best brands? But on the flip side, there's a lot of people that are in the M&A space, the acquisitions, that also love SmartScout because, it shows them the data of those brands. And so there's some, me bragging about my own product, but what I really enjoy is like, it's actually in the eyes of the beholders. Like, someone that jumps in and like, they always kind of see something a little bit different. They can get lost in a different brand than like I've ever seen before and just really tease out Amazon data. And so for a wholesaler, it just like helps you like target those first brands first, like the ones that just make the most sense.
Yeah, absolutely. So it helps us find the brands. But to your point, we've used it. We've kind of run some reports, some brand reports, and we've just send that Excel sheet that you can extract right to the brand, to help them like look at all their ASINs, their listing quality, how many people are selling it. We got one brand that we're trying to work. We helped them get brand registered, and now we're helping them kind of monitor and implement map and all that stuff. And they wanted a report of like, well, where's all my ASINs? Who's all selling this? And we were able to use your data, extract your data, and present them with a very good report and talk them through that. So not just for finding wholesale, but for managing and managing those brands, it's excellent.
You can, all of this data is actually publicly available, like the who's selling on what product and like who's winning the buy box. But man, you're going to like pay some virtual assistants a lot of money to like gather that regularly. The truth is, we pay a lot of money to servers to figure out this information on the back end and kind of like do that heavy lifting for you. Already you've actually said something that I've never heard anyone else say about SmartScout, in that you're using it to report back to brands. Show them what's up with their brand.
Yeah.
And actually, like, how does that conversation usually how does that lead the next conversations?
Well, what it's helped us do is a lot of these listings they've got over 15 sellers, right? And this conversation has now narrowed it down to 2. It's going to be us and it's going to be somebody else, right? So like we're helping them monitor, they're having issues with pricing, with people like just tanking the price and not following any sort of pricing guidelines. And so it's helping them implement a map policy. It's helping them protect their brand and the integrity of their pricing and all that stuff on Amazon. And because we're the ones that took that information to them, we have been selected as one of their 2 partners, right? So it's huge for us. It's great for them. Like it's a win-win situation for all of us.
Yeah. That's awesome. Yeah, no, I feel like you get it. I'm like, I feel like sometimes other people are using this tool better than we are, better than Buybox or my reselling business.
It's really helped us grow our business this year. We're looking to hopefully close out the year close to 4 million. We did 2.5 last year. So, we're not Buyboxer, but we're pretty happy with our size and our growth. And
growth comes at different costs as well. I'm always envious. I'm envious of like those high growth stages that you're at right now. That's fun. Well, I actually have something for Jim. And let's see if I can jog his memory. So I actually met Jim about 2 years ago. Had the chance to attend his conference in Illinois, the Proven Conference. And it was great, a lot of solid information. But right when we started meeting and talking, and like one idea that came across was actually this tool that became SmartScout. It's like, hey, like I like downloaded all this Amazon data, and like, if someone were out there to like want to use this, like I could just give that to them, and like, they could tap into our data source. And do you remember that, Jim?
I absolutely do. And I'm honored to be, as far as I know, one of the first beta users of the first ugly version. You're like, hey, what do you think so far? Right?
Yeah.
I absolutely remember that conversation.
Yeah. And, let's see. Boy, a lot happens in 2 years. And where I've come and seen the way that I can best serve other Amazon sellers, and that is really like now I'm just like all in on just making SmartScout better, and so that like what Rich was saying, that like their lives are a little bit easier. So I actually have a few questions for you, Jim. You had your in-person conference 2 years ago, and you probably saw COVID a little bit differently because, you really just have a very big community of sellers. And, I'm sure some of them, did really well, but of course it affected your community in like a pretty vibrant way. So take us, so what happened? How would you talk about the last 18 months?
Yeah. it's a benefit that we are. I like the question. I want to talk about some of the things. I was kind of living up to my name the first few minutes of this podcast, because Silent Jim sitting over here. Just I love surrounding myself with people who are smarter than myself and just learning, and that's what I've been doing. But I got a couple things I want to say about the things you guys said.
Okay.
But to take your question on, this is a virtual community by its very nature. We just kind of kept plowing right on through.
Yeah.
In many ways, I think a lot of us have learned there's a lot of benefits to this season that we've been in if we're paying attention. Now, if you listen to the steady drip of bad news, it can be a downer for sure. There's some ugly things going on in our culture and around the world, man. It stinks. But as Amazon sellers, there's opportunity here.
Yeah.
And especially in this replens model that we talk about, because I talk to private label sellers, I talk to wholesale sellers. We've got the whole gamut by the hundreds in our community. And the people who aren't struggling to find inventory are the replen sellers. And you can pull stuff off local shelves, right? And so they've kind of gone through this season of, in some cases, extreme growth, and they've benefited in big ways. But that next step up from we kind of create a pyramid, Scott, and we have the scanning barcodes is kind of the bottom entry level. Anyone can go do that on a weekend. Sometimes you make money, sometimes you don't. That's like the beginner. And then we get into the replens model. Some people stay there. And then we get into wholesale, which is what we're talking about today, with Rich being probably our premier leading wholesale success story student. And he's actually the one, because you and I, Scott, were bouncing back and forth on SmartScout. You'd send it to me and I looked at it, I'm like, man, this is really cool. A map, and you can see all this data, and you've kind of compiled it in a different way. But the guy that really kind of lit a fire under this whole thing for our community was Rich. He started texting me and calling me. He's like, Jude, you got to check us out. This is beautiful. We're using this those things. Helium and Jungle can't do this stuff that this guy's doing. And so now in my mind, you're in the same conversation as the big boys, and it's just an inevitable matter of time before you are kind of that third big player in the space, because you're doing some very unique things and you've come at it from a different angle. And I'll turn it back over to you in a moment, but the observation I have to make about our industry right now from a 10,000 foot view, again, I've been doing this 20 years, man. So sometimes I notice things. If you get on YouTube and you say, hey, I want to learn how to sell on Amazon, everybody's talking private label. That's cool. But you're starting wholesale, you're talking wholesale, and that's more our speed. And as evidence of that, you may not know this, Scott. I think I might be able to teach you something here. If you talk to the guys, you mentioned the aggregators earlier, the guys buying up all the Amazon accounts, the data they're looking at, they're just as excited. They're getting as excited about wholesale as they are private label. Like the guys at Accrue Me, that's one of the, the guys that loans money to sellers. They were telling me that they look at the first year results of a wholesale seller and they can hold it up right next to a private label seller, because you don't have the spikes and the valleys and the waiting months for your inventory. And then you're sold out way too fast, or you bought too much and now you're in too deep. You don't have that with wholesale. Your margins are slightly lower. Man, it's a stable model.
I mean, if I want to make money next month, wholesale is my first choice. If you want to chase revenue faster, if you want to have a supplemental income faster, wholesale without question.
Yeah, that's where I think most people should be starting instead of private label. Just my opinion. I've seen hundreds of sob stories now. My garage is full of this private label stuff they talked to me into on YouTube with this big fancy course and software and all this. And I've only sold 10% of it. What do I do? I've heard that story so many times that I'm like, hey, start with wholesale, order a few, scale your way into this slowly, learn the ropes. And that's, we've got a virtual army of guys like Rich, who that's their approach. That's where our coaching program is. Very few people come in and go private label.
Yeah. And I think, I know people that started in private label and moved to wholesale because of, it has challenges of its own. And if anyone doesn't acknowledge them, they actually are just being a little naive. And then again, at some point, some people do want to branch out and diversify. So there's a lot of different ways to succeed. I think it's, super interesting what you're saying about how Accrue Me is seeing these results of wholesalers, the first year. Mm-hmm. But then you're saying that right now wholesalers are having supply issues versus replens.
Right. The beauty of replens is you go to the store and I was joking around with our warehouse manager here just a couple of weeks ago, and he's like, I don't think we're going to need Keepa much longer. And I said, why is that? He said, everything on the shelf is a replen. You don't even need to look. It's just like you buy it, hold it long enough. It's kind of like the right Bitcoin, like it's worth twice as much as it was. And some of that's kind of sad. You know, inflation is a scary beast that I think is barking at every business in the world right now. I don't like where things are heading in many regards, but in another way, physical goods are increasing in value almost across the board. It's like, get in the game, guys. The stuff that is being delivered to Walmart is probably going to be worth more a month from now than it is right now in a lot of cases.
Yeah. I mean, sure. This is, I always thought 2021 was just going to be way more normal than it is. I thought 2020 was going to be the crazy one. And here we are.
2021 is like, hold my beer, right?
Yeah, no, really, it is, especially from, from a retailer's perspective. Well, Jim, tell me a little bit more about, you've had a community for like how long? A decade, and refreshed your wholesale course, and still bringing people in. What's changed? What's updated, and what's the same?
The secret sauce of my whole business model has been all along is stay humble enough to learn even from the newest of new students who come in with ideas and strategies. Ask questions. I want to always be, as I am right now, if you're looking at your screen, I don't want to be the smartest guy in the room. Both of you guys have accomplished way more than I have ever in several arenas. So to be able to work with people like that, that's been our strategy. So when Rich came to me and said, hey, we're getting ready to do 4 million wholesale, we're loving this tool, the SmartScout. I'm like, hey, I know Scott. He's been to our event. Let me text him and get you guys connected. And now we've got, you're hooking us up and you're teaching our team how to use the tool, and Rich is leading the charge. All I've done is kind of make the connections. So I surround myself with people who of integrity, who are accomplishing great things. And I say, hey, teach us something that we can all learn. And then of course, the benefit to Rich is, hey, he's one of our coaches. We pay our coaches in the industry, as far as I know, better than any other coaching industry in e-commerce, because we want really good people who really know their stuff, and it's hard to get their time. So that's the model that we've built. And I see this as such an expansive opportunity. Amazon is just one. And I know, Scott, you and I remember another conversation that you and I have had, and you've been very open in other episodes of yours that I've heard, but I'm not necessarily all that comfortable hitching my wagon to one website, Amazon, and that's it. That's all I got going, right? Like, because some grumpy 25-year-old wakes up tomorrow and hits a button. Now you don't have a business for the next month or 6 or right. So what are these other income streams we can get going? Education is a great stream, creating a tool such as you have, SmartScout. But let me just educate everyone listening to this. Another tool, and Rich hit on it a little bit earlier. We actually teach this with a lot of intentionality, is this skill set that you have is valuable to other brands and businesses out there. So when Rich is approaching some of these brands, I know because we've talked, so in some cases they say, we just want to kind of sell it ourselves, but maybe you could consult and help us do that. Sure. That's an income stream independent of your own Amazon seller account. And I would venture to guess most people listening to your show, because it's excellent, by the way, and I listen to most episodes.
Thank you.
Is you've got the skill set now to approach businesses confidently and say, hey, let's partner up. I need X% of every check Amazon sends you, but I'm going to help you really get going here. Rather than dealing with 43 sellers crashing your map pricing once a month, let's get your brand registered. Let's get you in there managing your own brand on your own account, and just give me a piece and I'll help you out. We've got people who do just that model. That's diversification.
Right. And that's like the agency model, right?
Exactly.
So here's a funny thing. Like, I know that model fairly well, and like some agencies use the tool just to get an idea of who they're talking to. Like, okay, this brand, like, it is a different conversation if they have like 3 products versus 300 products. And so you could kind of filter that out, find the brands that like, you're more familiar with. And here's a funny trick that we added about 2 months ago, is if a brand has a storefront where like, they built out the Amazon storefront or not, that's a simple filter. So now you can choose, do I want to work with brands that like have a storefront? That means they're like a little bit more sophisticated. Or do I want to work with brands that don't have one, because that means they have no idea what they're doing.
And they maybe need one. Right.
One of the things that surprised me the most with SmartScout, just developing on Amazon, is there's like 100,000 brands. There are so many brands out there. And I always feel like, oh, I want to hold all this information for myself. That's where I was in 2014. 2014, I was like, okay, every tool that I've got, that's our competitive advantage. That's our competitive advantage. And it was true. Like I was building, software. It was taking me a long time. But how small-minded that was when I didn't realize how big the ocean of Amazon is. And actually, I had a thought right there that reminded me of something that Rich said when he talked about like the tools SoStocked and Seller Board, RevSeller. In 2013, those tools weren't around.
Yeah.
And so we had to like learn and develop like the tough way. So I think, the fact that like Rich is like recommending software, like that is so valuable to someone that's like starting up, that like you don't have to invest. I mean, my brother invested in me, tens of thousands of dollars. Like I was a full-time employee, I got to live my life. And so I was a salaried employee just building software to help us grow. And so I love that like Rich had like, I probably might even like on another call ask him a little bit more about those tools and like how they're helping wholesale today. Shoot, I mean, I answered one or two questions right there, even a question that you didn't ask. Rich, where do you see, like as you've done this a few times and coaching a lot of more people in wholesale, where do you see this model going, in the years to come?
Oh, I don't know, man. I don't see it going anywhere really, right? I wish I had a crystal ball and I could see all that stuff, but it's having worked for a distributor myself, like I see even outside of Amazon, there's always a need for companies, or in our case with Amazon World, third-party sellers, to bring products to the market. Right. And just the last, 6 years doing this, we have come across so many brands that their core competency is creating a fantastic product. Right. But they know nothing about Amazon or eBay or even Walmart.com now. Right. So like, I think the need for us sellers, right now the opportunity is on Amazon, but the need for us wholesale sellers is always going to exist. Right. So, we're kind of in a unique world right now where we got boats sitting in the harbor for 6 weeks, can't get in. Like product is just hard to find. It's hard to move around. And so we as sellers add a huge value to the industry.
I've had one aggregator approach me about wholesaling. They're like, hey, we want to diversify this risk. We spent so much money on these businesses. Would you guys help us so we don't stock out or we don't hit quantity limits? So, and then another private label seller, this is just what I was reading on Reddit. He's like, yeah, I got out. I started wholesaling because I just didn't want to deal with Amazon anymore. The changes, where products get kicked off, ASIN's getting blocked. So they kept doing their brand, but just, wholesaled it out. So, I think that I'm saying that to add to what you were saying about the need for this.
Yeah.
Let me make an observation here too, just as we're breaking out the crystal balls, which we can all guess and scroll forward 5 years from now and come back and see how wrong we all were, on all these things. But I think the people that I've seen, again, this has been the only income for my family for coming up on 20 years now, is using the internet creatively to launch and grow multiple income streams. That's my tagline. I've said it 1,000 times, right? And I've seen a pattern. There is a pattern here. And I believe this pattern will hold true. And it was true before the internet even. And it's relationships. Relationships are what will sustain you and carry you. And what I mean very specifically by that is, I've seen some people, they crash and burn and they just kind of go away. Then you see other people that hit a hard time. There's a big change. Maybe even Amazon suspends them, right? If you don't have relationships, that is kind of a dead end. If you have relationships, though, you go to the other people in your circle and you say, hey, here's what's happened. I've got some great products. Let's shift them over to your account, build a mutually beneficial arrangement. Let's keep things rocking. We're in a relationship industry. And the question you asked me at the beginning of this, Scott, was, how did COVID affect things? To the degree that it damaged relationships is the degree that it damaged us.
Right.
It separated us out. So I just want to tell, every chance I get, this is a topic that I hit hard is, show me that list of people that you could call and they care about you because you care about them. You want that list to be growing. And that's what sustains you in this business. I think that's why I've made it 20 years. I can't think of anyone that was doing this with me 15 years ago who's still doing it. They've moved on. They're doing other things. This e-commerce education space chews up and spits out a lot of really good people. E-commerce in general does that. But the people who are building relationships and truly caring and building mutually beneficial arrangements and working like we are with you, Scott, and with Rich, Scott, and I know we're doing this thing together. There'll be other opportunities after that. We treat each other well. We make some money together. We have some fun. But the guys who are sitting behind a glowing keyboard, just trying to pound away and make some money and like leave me alone world, that's a dead end. And I would even say like to the guys who are playing with like, Bitcoin or whatever right now, man, that's a dead end.
Yeah.
You got to have relationships integrated in, be intentional about it, or you're going to crash and burn at some point.
I'll add to what you just said. So 2.5 years ago, I started, actually I started the idea of a podcast. I think I started the podcast just about 2 years ago. And really like why it changed my life is because like I became more transparent and people grabbed onto that. And then we built a relationship. You know what I mean? I was essentially like holding my hand out to people like, hey, who else out there wants to be friends? And enough people, have asked me questions. I probably get, a random person that I've never met every week, like says something. And my perspective's changed over the last 2 years. But what is interesting is just how I would do this podcast, even if it was just like me to like meet people and interview others and chat and hear things. So like me being open to relationships really like I see the success it's given me in the last 2 years. And so like, I'm leaning into the future. And I mean, we could talk about that all the time, but like in wholesale, relationships really do matter. And there's like small things that you do that matter. For example, especially this is a wholesale trick, is paying your bills on time, very regularly, and consistently ordering with someone. Yeah, you can like have a good time on the phone with someone, but the next stage of that relationship is actually a consistency. They know who you are. You're and that's how you get into, like how Rich was saying, into an authorized list of 2 or 3 sellers. And that's kind of the gold mine right there. When, you got a good relationship. Sometimes we actually didn't like being an exclusive, because all of a sudden the expectations were like unrealistic.
Yeah.
They're like, okay, guys, you're exclusive now. We want, double us in like 3 months. And I'm like, it's just not going to happen.
I'd love to hear from Rich, like some of his tricks on tips and tricks. He's been doing the wholesale game a long time, like building relationships in that space. One observation I want to make for you, Scott, if you don't mind me passing the ball to him, is I think if you're a man of many assets, you're building many machines and you're operating. I would say, I think if we spent some time, I could convince you the most valuable asset I think you have right now. SmartScout's beautiful. Buy Boxer, incredible business. These different warehouses, employees. I think the most valuable asset you have right now is this community of people who are listening to you when you share what it is you know.
Yeah.
That will transfer, that will carry, no matter what Amazon does to you, no matter what Jungle Scout and Helium come out with, that tries to take out SmartScout. Those things don't matter, because if you've got people who love, trust, and you mentioned trust, that's just consistency over time. That's all it is. And that builds trust. You're consistent over a long period of time. And, I'll have people come up to me and say, hey, I've been listening to you for 15 years. We've never met, but I feel like I know you, man. And I feel like I owe you a bunch of money because you've helped me in
Right.
so many ways. Like, I don't know who this person is, but if I needed a favor, they would do it. Right. And
Yep.
you're building that with this podcast.
Yep.
You're doing because of your transparency. You're not coming in, hey, I'm the guy that knows all the answers. I can't listen to those podcasts, man. Like,
Yeah.
no, you're not. You're pretending. When's the last time you asked a vulnerable, humble question of the people near you? Like, you can just
Right.
tell. It's like it's your show. You want people to think you're awesome, and
Yeah.
we can't take it. But you come at it with a humility. You're doing it the right way. And again, I'm a huge fan, man. I
All
love
right.
your show.
Well,
It's on my list. Seriously.
Thank you, Jim. That's very generous.
No,
Thank you.
it's completely sincere, but I do want to hear from Rich because I think that may be some serious
Yeah.
value. He's been doing this a long time, and I've never actually heard him go into this.
Oh, well, so I tend to agree with Scott. Like, I don't really like the pressure of an exclusive an account. Like, it's nice, it seems nice, it looks nice, right? But like, you can't run out of stock. Like, there's so much pressure of it. I love the semi-exclusive of being like one of two or one of three, right? I love sitting in that arena. And the way that our favorite way to approach it is through MAP. And so MAP, minimum advertised price, we love to help brands set that up. And we also love to help brands monitor it and just kind of talk brands through like why it's good on Amazon. And because most brands, like they really don't like Amazon sellers, right? Because we're always tanking the price or whatever, right? And MAP helps control that, but only if you have a small number of sellers, right? It's really hard to police MAP if there's 15 people selling the product.
Yeah.
Right. So we kind of walk brands through that. We talk them through that. Like, it's so much easier if you only have two or three and you know exactly who those two or three are. Right. And so like one of the things that my warehouse manager likes to, or not my warehouse, my wholesale manager likes to do is he likes to like once a week just kind of scan through all of the brands that have MAP agreement, take a look at their products and just make sure it's still at MAP. And if they're not, it's an excuse for him to pick up the phone and call a brand, right? He'll call the rep. Hey, how you doing? Oh, hey, by the way, did you guys see this? Like, someone's violating MAP. And after a couple of times, like, we kind of become like the go-to and kind of walk through like why it's important, how it helps. Oh, have you guys thought about brand registration? Because brand registration can also help with that. You really know who's on the listing, and then we help them set up the brand registration. And once you add value a couple of times like that, they're like, okay, like let's talk. Let's see like what are some good strategies in helping control this Amazon platform and the sales. And then you walk them through, hey, if you had 2 sellers, if you had 3 sellers, then you could really, step up your level of control and how those sellers represent your brand. So pick the best 2, pick the best 3. Definitely pick us. And
right.
But that's so MAP for us and brand registration are 2 like leading ways of like helping brands and getting that semi-exclusive.
And like, another way that's completely different is just build a storefront for them. Be like, hey, well, you can even sell that. Be like, hey, you could do it, at a very cheap price, for $300-400. I'll build you a storefront. Here's ones that I've done in the past. Here's what I can do for you. And then all of a sudden, you're their Amazon guy.
Yeah, that's a great idea. I love it.
Well, thanks, Rich, Jim, coming and talking. Plenty to go over. We did some forecasting. We talked about the different things. I gave you some right perspective on SmartScout. Jim, I always love to hear your perspective. You always have an integrity aspect into the way that you talk and do business, and so it's always refreshing to hear that. And Rich, I mean, I love you because you're just using SmartScout, like you get it. So that's probably all we've got. And so
hey, one thing, there's a question we didn't answer. How do people get a hold of Rich to go learn from him, man? And what's the name of the course? We didn't even mention it.
Yeah. What's that, Rich?
So you can get more information at the Replan, but replanwholesaleworkshop.com is the website. You go to that website, you can fill out an application, and the coaching office will give you a call. You can message me, but of course, I'm just going to direct you right back to that. So yeah, Replan Wholesale Workshop.
All right. There you go. I'll link that in this description. Rich, Jim, thanks for coming on. This was great. And look forward to talking with you guys more in the future.
Thanks,
All right.
Scott.
So
Sure thing.